Hey YouTube. I have to admit something. I have been designing a small telephone exchange that would use the older style telephones and uses electromechanical relays and switches rather than the new digital electronics. And the reason I'm doing this is partly because I'm educating myself on how phones work, but also because electromechanical equipment, for the most part, is immune to magnetic pulse. And there may be an instant when a person might want a communication system that's hardened. And I'll admit, getting phones to work by hooking them together is easy. But when you have a two-wire setup and you want them to be able to ring, man, that is a job getting all that stuff set up right. So basically, in this experiment, I am attempting to wire a manual switchboard, or a somewhat manual switchboard, where an operator can sit and control the phone calls, and the switchboard will handle maybe a maximum of 10 phones. But this is a request I'm making for anybody out there. If you know anybody that in their attic or in a junk drawer or somewhere in a garage they have one of those old Southwestern Bell or Bell rotary style phones, or even the old push button phones, you know, the early stuff, not the new stuff, because the voltages I'm going to be working with and the circuits I'm going to be working with, I think the older phones will be able to hack it a little bit better than newer wall phones, just because of the way they were made. There were relatively few parts and very few electronic parts. So if anybody knows anybody that's got an old junker somewhere in their attic or in a garage or in a stuffed box, I need guinea pigs. I need phones I can explode. So if you have something like that, or you know somebody that does, leave me a comment, or even leave me a comment anyway if you know where I might be able to find some old junk phones like that. And as like I said, I'm looking for the old desktop or wall mount rotary style, but the old push button that came right after are fine too. They're not going to use any kind of dialing circuitry anyway, because number one, getting a hold of S-by-S switches is kind of tough, and getting a hold of rotary relays is really tough. So I'm stuck building a switchboard that's run by an operator, which is fine with me. You know, I just want to see the whole principle of the thing work and see that it works. Because when I get it all built, I'm going to build an EMP simulator, and I'm going to put it all underneath it and set it off and see if it'll hold up. And if it does, well, then I've accomplished my job. I'll have a system that if something bad happens, like EMP or solar flare, it could be very quickly moved into place, wired up, and phones made to work. So a contribution to the community. But I'm going to try to get it to work on the newer phones, but newer phones are not as immune to EMP as the older phones are. And that's the whole thing. I want to build a system that works and is robust, but I need real equipment to test it with. And I've already come up with some schematics. The trick is I've got it where the thing will communicate. I've got it where it'll all communicate over trunk wires. And I've got it where an operator gets all of the appropriate signals, but the thing that I don't have quite yet, I'm working on the ring trip switch, but without a real phone I can't get the amperages and resistances I need to make the thing work, to calibrate it. And I'm having to build it all from scratch, so it's been really, really tough finding any data, any telephone company data about those older systems, man. It's almost non-existent. There's some PDFs floating around, but the info is really fragmented about how that stuff is wired to make it work. I mean, I know the old stuff, like the old country phones with the cranks, I know how those worked. and those would be theoretically easier to wire up, but you know, nobody uses connections like that. I have to work with the infrastructure that's in existence, the RJ45 plugs and the 2-wire connections. I can't go back that far, and who's going to have the batteries to make those old phones work anyway? So, you know, you go from local battery in the phones to common battery at the exchange, and that's what I'm trying to set up. I mean, if I have to, if I could find them, I'd step back that far, but who's got those old things, you know? And the people that do have them, they think they're some kind of worth their weight in gold collectible, but, you know, other than a wall hanger, that's all they're really good for at this point. So, looking for stuff from like the 70s or earlier, you know, the old rotary type phones. And if you know somebody, let me know. And I'll keep y'all apprised. Right now I'm in the schematic designing phase. I've got to get my hands on prototyping boards. I got to get my hands on breadboards. Some big project enclosures. A shit ton of RJ11 plugs. And lots of switches. Lots and lots of switches. But anyway, if anybody knows anybody who can help, or if you have something that might be able to throw into the project, let me know. I'm going to be digging up and down the street in these abandoned houses and see if I might be able to scavenge a couple of old phones. But you know, do you want to build something? Sometimes you get an interest in something and the parts just aren't around anymore. I mean, I'd love to get my hands on a step-by-step exchange with all the relays and everything, you know, or at least a few banks or a bank of switching equipment. That would further my education quite a lot. I mean, I'd love to see that stuff in operation, because then I could kind of get a concept, you know, by reverse engineering it, or you know, metering it out, figuring out how all that stuff works. I mean, with what I've learned on the internet so far and what I could gather from real-world experience, it would probably be a challenge, but it would be a fun thing to get that kind of stuff working again. You know, even if it just builds a small PBX, I'd like to build a small PBX of some kind. But I don't want to do this, like I said, I don't want to do it with computers. I want to do this the most simple way possible, with the most easy to obtain parts. I mean, relays, you can get them all day long at Radio Shack. As like I said, I want to build it so that magnetic pulse stands little chance of hurting it. So I'm going with older technologies, trying to put all that back together. So anybody that can help, leave me something in the comments. Let me know. I mean, if you've got even an old telephone or something, we can arrange some way to get it here. Maybe I could do some kind of a trade or a barter, who knows. Anyway, y'all take care.